For years, I paid €5 for coffee. Every single day. And like most people, I hardly noticed it. It was this quiet hum in the background of my life. A soft beep at the terminal, a movement of the hand, and then it was over. Harmless, right? Just €5. That's how it feels. The problem is, money doesn't work in single moments. It works on a timeline. And on that timeline, those €5, they don't just sit there. They transform. Over years, over decades, they quietly gather into thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even more. And you're probably doing it too. Right now. With your coffee, the lunch you order when you're tired, the subscription you forgot you had. You're trading pieces of a future you can't quite picture for moments of comfort you can barely remember. And the strange part is, it doesn't feel like a trade. It just feels like living. Today, I don't want to give tips or a list of things to do. I just want to make the invisible visible, to show the quiet math that's been running in the background of your life, and then to talk about what we do when we finally see it. My name is Jordan, and this is where my story with money really began. Chapter 1. A morning that changed everything. 3 years ago. A Tuesday. Nothing special. I was in line at my usual cafe. The air smelled like roasted beans and damp wool from the rain outside. Everyone was just waiting, looking at their phones, not talking. I ordered my usual, large latte, extra shot, $6.50. I paid, I took the cup, I walked out into the drizzle. And that was it. That was the whole moment. It felt like nothing. Just another transaction in a life full of them. But later that day, I couldn't shake a feeling, a kind of hollow quietness in my chest. It wasn't worry. It was heavier, slower, like something was missing. So, I did something I'd avoided for a long time. I opened my bank statement. Not to check my balance, but to really look at where the money went. I started with the small things, the €5 charges, the €3 payments, the 12s and the 7s. I traced them back, month after month, a river of tiny, meaningless expenses. And then, I opened a calculator. I asked a simple question. What if? What if this money wasn't leaving? What if it was staying? What could it become? The number that came back, it didn't make sense at first. It felt like a joke, a mistake in the math. I checked it again, and again, and then my stomach just dropped. That $6.50 latte wasn't a drink, it was a choice I'd been making every day without realizing it. I thought I was buying a coffee, but I was really buying a pause, a small, expensive permission slip to not think about tomorrow, to feel for just a minute like everything was okay. And that was the day the illusion started to crack. The day I realized my most expensive habit wasn't anything dramatic. It was just showing up, day after day, paying for the comfort of not seeing. Chapter 2. The Invisible Math. Let's sit with that feeling for a moment. The feeling of seeing something you've been missing. It's not about shame. It's about clarity. And to find clarity, we have to follow the numbers. Not to punish ourselves, but to understand, to see the system. €5. That's one coffee, one transaction. Our brains are built to understand that. It's immediate, it's concrete. But money doesn't live in single moments. It lives across time. And that's where our intuition fails us completely. So let's stretch that €5 across time. Let's be gentle with ourselves and reasonable. Say you buy coffee on workdays. That's about 22 days a month. €110. That's the first shift. It's no longer a coffee. It's a monthly commitment, a quiet subscription you're paying to what? To a feeling, to a routine. Now, take that month and stretch it across a year. €1,320. That's not invisible anymore. That's a real thing. That's a piece of furniture. That's a flight somewhere. That's something you can hold in your mind. And if we hold that pattern, if we just let it continue, not for some impossible stretch, but for a single decade, 10 years, 13,200 euros for coffee. That's a number that has weight. You can feel it in the room. But we're still thinking like savers. We're just adding things up. And money, when it's treated with a little respect, it doesn't just add up. It grows. It compounds. It starts to work on its own. So, let's ask a different question. What if that 110 euros each month didn't disappear? What if instead of leaving, it was quietly put to work in the background of the world, in a simple, boring fund that just follows the global economy? Historically, that kind of thing has grown at about 7% a year, after accounting for inflation. Not a guarantee, just the general direction of human progress. After 10 years, it's not 13,000. It's closer to 19,000. After 20 years, it's not 26,000. It's 58,000. After 30 years, it's 136,000 euros. 136,000 euros from 5 euros a day. That €5 latte, it was never just a drink. It was a down payment on either a future of options or a future of the same. And I was choosing the same over and over again without ever knowing I was in a voting booth. Chapter 3. Why we don't feel the pain. And here's what I couldn't figure out for the longest time. If the math is so clear, if the trade is so vast, why doesn't it hurt? Why could I tap my card for that 650 without a flicker of doubt? But the thought of wiring 1,000 euros to a stranger would tie my stomach in knots. My brain, it felt like it was lying to me. Or maybe it was just telling me two different stories at once. And I've come to believe that's exactly what's happening. There's a part of me, let's call it the architect, the planner. It looks at that number, 136,000, and it understands. It sees a safety net. It sees a door left open for a different kind of life. It sees years of worry lifted. That part of me gets it completely. But then there's the other part. The part that's tired at 7:30 a.m. The part that feels the stress of the commute, the pressure of the inbox, the weight of everything I'm supposed to be. That part doesn't speak the language of decades and percentages. It speaks in feelings. It speaks in needs. And what it needs, in that moment, is a small island of peace. A ritual. A familiar warmth in the hands. A taste that says, this is your moment, however small. To that part of me, 5 euros isn't money. It's a treaty. A peace agreement with a stressful morning. And these two parts, they don't talk. The planner doesn't tap the tired person on the shoulder and explain compound interest. The tired person doesn't send a memo to the planner about emotional fatigue. They operate in separate rooms, and in the silence between them, the transaction happens. The future gets traded for the present, not out of greed or stupidity, out of a lack of translation. So, we don't buy coffee. We buy a ceasefire, a temporary truce between who we are right now and who we're afraid we might need to become. We're not being irresponsible. We're self-medicating with the only currency we have, for a stress we can't quite name. And the cruelest part, the less secure that future feels, the more vague and intimidating the planner's big numbers become, the more expensive those small truces get. We end up paying a premium for comfort, with the very resources that could make the need for that comfort disappear. It's a perfect silent loop, and breaking it doesn't start with giving up coffee. It starts with introducing those two parts of yourself, getting them to sit at the same table, not to fight, but to finally meet. Chapter 4. From Victim to Architect. For a long time after I saw those numbers, I just felt stuck. I saw the problem, but the solution felt like a punishment. Give up the small things that get you through the day? That's not a solution. That's just swapping one kind of pain for another. I tried being the coffee saver. I made it at home. I felt clever for a week, but then the money I saved just seeped out elsewhere. A more expensive lunch because I'd been good. A spontaneous online purchase. The leak wasn't the coffee. The leak was my attention. I'd fixed a symptom and missed the sickness. I'd swing between two poles, feeling guilty for spending or feeling deprived for saving. It was exhausting. And my bank account, it just stayed the same. Anxious, static. The shift didn't come from trying harder. It came from asking a different question. I stopped asking, how do I stop spending? And started asking, what do I actually want my money to do for me? And the answer was simple, almost stupidly simple. I wanted my money to do two things. I wanted it to secure a future that felt calm and open. And I wanted it to allow for a present that felt human. That included coffee. That included spontaneous things. That included being with friends without a knot in my stomach. The problem was, I was trying to do both jobs with the same pot of money in the same moment, with my willpower as the manager. And willpower is a terrible manager. It gets tired. It gets resentful. It quits. So I stopped trying to manage. I started trying to design. I designed a tiny, quiet system. It has 3 buckets. Bucket 1, for the future. This bucket is invisible. On the day my salary arrives, a portion of it, not a heroic portion, just a respectful one, automatically leaves. It goes somewhere I can't easily touch. Its job is to grow quietly across time. Its only instruction is, become safety, become options. I don't manage it day to day. I just fund it, like paying a quiet, extremely reliable employee whose only job is to build a foundation. Bucket 2. For today's necessities. Rent, bills, groceries, the infrastructure of life. This money has a clear, non-negotiable job. It's not for debating. And then, Bucket 3, my small pleasures fund. This is everything that's left, and its job is to be spent. With freedom, with guiltlessness. This is the part that changed everything. In Bucket 3, I put a specific, small amount. I called it my small pleasures fund. And in that fund is my coffee money. My maybe I want that magazine money. My it's sunny, let's sit outside money. And when I stand in that cafe line now, and I tap my card, the transaction doesn't come from a place of anxiety or escape. It comes from Bucket 3. It's been allocated for this exact purpose, to bring a small, conscious moment of pleasure into my day. The planner has already been taken care of by Bucket 1. The tired person gets to speak without guilt. I didn't become a different person. I didn't develop iron willpower. I just introduced my tired self to my planning self. I gave them each a defined space, a clear responsibility. I stopped making them fight over the same euro. The coffee didn't change. The ritual didn't change. What changed was everything around the coffee. The silent, screaming tension was gone. The drink was just a drink again. Not a consolation prize, not a financial sin, just a warm cup on a gray morning. That's the move. From being a victim of every passing impulse and every looming fear, to being the quiet architect of a system that holds both, that makes room for both the future you need and the present you're actually living. Chapter 5. The Invisible Drain. Not just coffee. Coffee was just the door, the first crack in the wall. Once I started looking through it, I saw the same pattern everywhere, a whole ecosystem of tiny, silent agreements I'd made with my present self, paid for with my future's currency. I looked at my subscriptions, not just the ones I used, but the ones that just existed. The music service, the video service, the cloud storage for photos I never looked at, the fitness app I opened 3 times a month. Each one, a small monthly fee. A $5 here, a $10 there. Harmless. Together, over €100 a month. A silent automated loyalty program to my own inattention. Then, I looked at what I called lifestyle creep. It's not buying a sports car. It's subtler. It's getting a small raise, and without any decision, your groceries get a little nicer. You take a taxi instead of the train twice a week. You order in because you're tired, and the because you're tired becomes most nights. The extra money, it never even lands. It just gets absorbed by a slightly more expensive version of the same life. And then, the hardest one to see, the social tax. Saying yes to the expensive dinner not because you want the food, but because you're afraid of the silence after you say no. Afraid of the label. Afraid of being the one who doesn't get it. That yes costs €60, and it buys you social safety, a membership fee to belonging. When I added them, not to shame myself but to see, the coffee, the subscriptions, the creep, the social fees, the number wasn't a punishment. It was a fact. It was the financial shadow of the life I was actually living. A life running on convenience, on avoidance, on tiny appeasements. And that shadow, over the decades, it wasn't just a down payment. It was the price of a home, a whole asset, a thing that could generate safety, that could house a dream. I realized I wasn't funding a life of luxury. I was funding a life of distraction. I was using money as a noise-canceling headset against the quiet fear of an uncertain future. And the cost of that noise cancellation was the future itself. It's a perverse, perfect equation. And seeing it, it doesn't make you angry at the coffee shop or the streaming service or your friends. It makes you curious about the agreements you've signed in the quiet moments, and whether you still want to be bound by them. Chapter 6. Mental Shift. Clarity over Willpower. After I saw that number, after it settled in the room with me, I knew I couldn't try harder. Trying harder was what got me here. The cycle of guilt, restriction, and eventual slip. That's not a solution. It's a pendulum, and I was tired of swinging. My willpower was a finite resource, already drained by 100 other things. Asking it to also stand guard over every €5 decision was like asking a tired soldier to guard every single door in a castle. It was a doomed strategy. The leaks weren't a moral failure. They were a design flaw. So, I stopped trying to guard the doors. I started studying the castle. I gave myself one simple, non-judgmental task: to watch. For 90 days, I would just observe. No budgets, no rules, just a notepad, physical or digital, where I would write down every single thing I spent money on. Especially the small things, especially the things I felt a twinge of shame about. And it was uncomfortable. Not because of the money, but because of the attention. Writing down €4.50 pastry at 10 a.m. forced me to see it, to acknowledge the tired, hungry person who bought it. It wasn't good or bad. It was data. Human data. After about a month, patterns emerged. Not dramatic ones, quiet ones. I spent more on weekdays when my sleep was poor. I spent online on Sunday nights, a quiet, restless time. The social tax spiked when I was feeling insecure about work. The money wasn't random. It was a map of my emotional state, a ledger of my unfelt feelings. And at the end of those 90 days, I had a number. The amount of money that flowed through these small, almost invisible channels. For me, it was around €350 a month. Money I was spending without ever really deciding to. Money that was just reacting to fatigue, to boredom, to anxiety. That number, it wasn't a monster. It was a fact. And a fact you can work with. You can't negotiate with a feeling of guilt, but you can have a conversation with a number. So I started the conversation. I took that €350 and I asked it, "What is your job?" And its job, clearly, was comfort. It was the cost of managing the friction of being a human in a demanding world. And then I asked the real question. Is there a better, quieter, more permanent way to fund that job? This is where the buckets came from. They weren't a budgeting trick. They were a peace treaty. Bucket 1. The future got funded first, automatically, the moment money arrived. Its job was to build real, structural safety, so that the need for expensive daily comfort might lessen. Bucket 2. Necessities was allocated, the walls and the roof. And then with what was left, I created Bucket 3, the peace treaty. And in it, I deliberately, consciously placed an amount for small pleasures. It was less than the 350 reactive euros, but it was mine. It was intentional. It was guilt-free. The final filter was a simple question I'd ask myself at the moment of any non-essential spend. I'd look at the price and I'd ask, if this cost 10 times as much, would I still buy it? A €15 cocktail becomes €150. Would I buy it? The answer was almost always no. And in that no, I discovered something. I didn't want the cocktail. I wanted the permission to relax. The cocktail was just the most available price tag for that feeling. And knowing that, I can sometimes find a different, cheaper permission. A walk, a phone call, just sitting and doing nothing. Or sometimes I'd buy the cocktail anyway, from the Peace Treaty Fund, and enjoy it fully, because it was a conscious choice, not an expensive twitch. The goal wasn't to eliminate spending. It was to eliminate unconscious spending, to replace the reactive drain with a conscious flow. Clarity, not willpower, became the manager. And clarity doesn't get tired. It just sees. Chapter 7. 2 Lives, 2 Stories. Let me tell you about 2 people I know. Not to judge one or celebrate the other, but to show how these quiet systems play out, year after year, in the texture of a life. Daniel. He's in his early 50s. He has a good job. He's thoughtful. He drinks his latte every morning. He's not reckless. If you looked at his life, you'd see responsibility. But if you could sit with him at his kitchen table on a Sunday evening, you'd feel a different current, a quiet, persistent hum of what if. He talks about maybe buying a place one day, but it's in the distant, fuzzy future. The numbers feel too big. The down payment is a mountain. He saves, but it's sporadic. A chunk here when he gets a bonus, nothing for months when things are tight. His savings account is like a nervous heartbeat. His coffee is fine, good even, but there's a faint, metallic aftertaste to it. The aftertaste of a trade he knows he's making, but can't quite see. He's exchanging sips of his daily life for a future that feels perpetually out of focus. He's not unhappy. He's just waiting for a miracle or for the math to somehow change on its own. Then there's Elena. Same age, similar city, similar income. She also loves her morning ritual. But about 10 years ago, she did one simple thing. She set up an automatic transfer, €5 a day, the cost of that latte, into a simple, boring investment fund. She never felt it leave. It was like setting a clock to tick in a silent room. 10 years later, that silent clock, it built something. That €5 a day, untouched, has grown to over €18,000. It's not a fortune, but it's a fact. A solid, quiet fact in her financial life. And her coffee? She still drinks it every morning. But the drink is different now. It's not a transaction with her future. It's just a drink. Sometimes, she tells me, she'll take a sip and a small private smile will appear. Not because the coffee is so good, but because the quiet dread is gone. The math is no longer her adversary. It's a slow, quiet ally working in another room. The difference between Daniel and Elena isn't discipline. It's not intelligence. It's not even the money. It's the system. Daniel sees every financial act as a solitary, willpower-driven event. A latte is a latte. A savings transfer is a hard decision he has to make, again and again. Elena sees time. She saw the timeline. She understood that a system, one tiny automated rule, would outlast her daily moods, her fatigue, her moments of doubt. She didn't change her habits. She changed the environment her habits lived in. One person is negotiating with every single day. The other made one quiet agreement with a decade, and that agreement, it holds. Chapter 8. Identity Upgrade. There's a moment that comes after you've watched the patterns, after you've set up the quiet system. It doesn't arrive with a fanfare. It's more like a fog lifting. You realize you're no longer having the same conversation with yourself. The old conversation was a loop. Can I afford this? Should I feel bad about this? What am I giving up? It was a debate between a scarcity mindset and a guilt mindset. Two sides of the same exhausted coin. The new conversation is quieter. It's not even really a conversation. It's more of a recognition. You look at a potential spend, the coffee, the dinner out, the new thing, and the question isn't, can I or should I? The question is, does this belong in the life I'm consciously building? And sometimes the answer is yes. A resounding, guilt-free yes. Because the money for it sits in the peace treaty bucket. It's been allocated for joy, for connection, for small human pleasures. Spending it is not a leak. It's a fulfillment of the plan. And sometimes the answer is no. But the no doesn't feel like deprivation. It feels like a different kind of yes. A yes to the future version of yourself who will thank you for the clarity. A no to the thing is simply a louder yes to something else you've deemed more important. This is the identity shift. You are no longer the person who is bad with money or the person who has to resist temptation. You become the architect, the steward, the person whose primary financial job is not to police individual euros, but to design and tend to a system that aligns with your deeper values. Values that include both security and pleasure, both future and present. The coffee isn't a test of your character. It's just an item in the system. The system itself, the automated savings, the allocated spending, that's what embodies your character. Your discipline is invested once in the design. Then you are free to live within it. It turns out, willpower is not for daily denial. Willpower is for the single moment of setting up the structure. After that, the structure holds you. Chapter 9. Before you go. This has been a lot. It's not a simple tip. It's a way of seeing, and I'm still in the middle of it, figuring it out day by day. So, I'm genuinely curious. Not for the algorithm, but for the conversation. Where did your mind go while watching this? Did you think of your own coffee? That one small, repeating habit whose cost you've never quite traced on a timeline? If you feel comfortable, tell me in the comments. Not what you spend, but what you feel about it. The tension, the guilt, the quiet worry, or the moment of clarity you might have had. Let's not make this about perfect numbers. Let's make it about the human experience behind them. I read them. If this quiet exploration of the invisible math resonated with you, if it made something you felt but never named suddenly clearer, then I would be deeply grateful if you'd press the like button. It's a small signal in the noise that says, "This mattered." And if you'd like to join me as I try to untangle other silent systems that shape our lives, not just money, but time, attention, the architecture of our days, then you are welcome to subscribe, but only if this felt like real value. Thank you for your time, for your attention. That's the most valuable currency any of us have. I'm Jordan. Enjoy your next coffee, whatever's in it, but maybe drink it consciously. Not because you have to, but because you get to.